So welcome everyone to this nice little side session here. My name is Brandon. I am a product manager at Mixpanel, and today we're going to be talking about one of the key questions product managers have, and that is, did it work? So let's go ahead and get into this. A little bit of background about me. I've been with Mixpanel for just about 5 years, product manager on our analysis user experience team. And prior to that, I had been working on a couple different analysis features within Mixpanel, one of which we'll be talking about today. And my previous job experience, I was a business analyst at Deloitte Consulting. And there's my LinkedIn and Twitter if you care about that at all. So let's go ahead and get into it. The purpose of this presentation today is to talk a little bit about how Mixpanel answers some of the key questions that many product managers will encounter in their careers. And those questions are, what happened? Why did it happen? What should we do? And did it work? So let's talk about what those questions mean a little bit here. So to answer the question of what happened, product managers will often turn to their tools to measure their key metrics. And that can be conversion metrics, engagement, retention, what have you, activation, all sorts of stuff out there. You just need to be able to monitor the health of your product and make sure people are using it effectively and in the way that you would intend. And then if you notice something changes, then you might ask, why did that happen? And so there's a variety of ways to dig into why something might have happened. Maybe a particular of your users might have caused a change in a metric, or maybe there's been an outage or something like that. And you'll use an analytics tool to dig into why a metric might have changed. And of course, after you've analyzed why a metric has changed, there's usually something you're going to do about it. Maybe a feature that you're going to ship, can we improve the user experience of that feature? Maybe you'll turn to marketing. Maybe you just need to fix your site, who knows? But you'll probably take some form of effort in order to move your metric to where you want it to be, whether that be a goal or just getting it back to normal. And so after you've gone through that process of building a new feature, launching it, or doing some new marketing, you're going to have the question, did that work? And unfortunately, that is a very difficult question to answer. Right now, there's kind of two ways that you can answer this question, at least in a standard model here. So one of those ways is just to take a time series of your metric over time and compare before and after you launched your new feature. Did my metric go up after the feature was launched? Maybe that indicates success. But that might not be, the success might not be attributable to your feature. So let's say we launch something on Tuesday, October 8th, but a ton of things could have happened on Tuesday, October 8th that might have impacted the metric. Obviously, the new feature was launched. Maybe you shipped a new app. There's a new visualizer, launched a new campaign, and it's impossible to tell what exactly caused that upward trend. And so this time series analysis, while easy to do, is not necessarily accurate because you can't actually form a causal relationship between your new feature launching and the metric changing. And that's why A/B testing exists, because you can release your new feature to half your users, withhold it from the other half, and then that allows you to actually get a sense for how your new feature might have changed behavior. So this is the scientific way of tackling this question of, did my efforts, did my feature launch, did my marketing campaign, did it work? But one problem with A/B testing is that, among many problems with A/B testing, is that the group that has the new feature probably going to be happier than the group that does not have the new feature. And that's something that that I personally, whenever I find I'm in the holdout cohort of an A/B test, I'm always disappointed. I really want to try it out, that new feature. And of course, there's myriad other problems with A/B testing as well. It takes a lot of time to set up properly. You have to have infrastructure in place to handle it, to be able to split users into the different groups. And then, of course, it takes time to actually get results after the test is run for a while, so you can achieve statistical significance. And so while it is the most scientifically accurate way of measuring the impact of a feature launch, it is also one of the more frustrating to deal with. And so at Mixpanel, we've started to take a new approach to answering this question of did it work? One that we hope is as easy as a time series comparison, but is at least as accurate as an A/B test. We're trying to blend the positives of both of those previously mentioned methods into one. And one way that we think we can do that is by starting with a time series, but then adding on to it. First, let's break out the time series into two cohorts of users. Users that actually have tried your new feature and the users that have not. And so if we see there's an upward trend in the people that have used the new feature, but not an upward trend in the users that haven't, then we might be tempted to say that yes, the new feature was a success, and it actually caused this change in the metric. But there's still more that we need to do to really isolate the impact of that feature. The first thing we're going to do is shift all of the users' time series such that there's centered around this day 0 here. You can see in the middle of the chart. And day 0 is the day that they first try the new feature. People tried the feature at different times. So I might have tried the new feature 2 weeks ago. You might have tried it today. And we need to be able to effectively compare our behavior pre and post on the same basis. So we're comparing apples to apples, right? And so the first thing we do is kind of mash all of our user time series together so that we can always do an accurate pre-post calculation. And that, once we've done that, that's when we can start to say, all right, maybe we're really onto something here. And so this is a little screenshot of Mixpanel's impact report, which is one of our most recently released new reports that answers this question of did it work? And as you can see in the screenshot, we're looking at two time series. One is the users that have tried a new feature, in this case, joining a loyalty program. And one is the time series of users that have not tried the loyalty program. And as you can see, before and after the launch, there is a slight widening of the gap between the two groups in terms of their rate at which they perform a goal metric. In this case, it is adding to cart and the cart value. And so this is indicative of a successful launch. But there's still one problem with this analysis, and that is self-selection bias. Self-selection bias arises in any situation in which individuals select themselves into a group, causing a biased sample with non-probability sampling. That's a technical definition, but in product analytics, it kind of manifests itself in that the most active users are also the most likely to try out your new feature. And so there's no way to know whether or not the change in behavior is simply because those most active users are the ones that actually try the new feature. So if we go back a couple lines here, maybe this blue line up here is just your most active users, and therefore naturally they have higher usage than the users that are in the red line. And so what we need to do is isolate for the self-selection bias. And we do that via a machine learning method called propensity matching. So propensity matching will actually look at each user, go back through their event history, and try to determine what the likelihood is that they would try your new feature in the first place. So every user will get a propensity score from 0 to 1, 0 being they definitely will not try the new feature, 1 being they definitely will try the new feature. but most users fall somewhere in the middle. So maybe users will have a score of 0.2, a 0.8, and you can actually group up users based on their propensity scores. And so that's what you're seeing at the bottom of this chart here with the impacted events. So you can form different subclasses of users based on their propensity. Now, within each of those subclasses, and reminder that those subclasses are users that have similar propensity to try your new feature, which means we've isolated for self-selection bias. Now we can go back and do that same sort of pre-post and cohort analysis and compare the adopters of the feature versus the non-adopters of the feature within each of these groups. And then finally, if we take an average of all those subclasses, you get the actual the overall impact that your feature had. And so you can see that here at this 29.78. So that is one of the new features in Mixpanel that we're really excited about, and it answers this question: did it work? And we're happy to announce that we've done some testing and found that this is just about as accurate as your typical A/B test, which means we actually have successfully achieved our goal, as stated earlier, which was to make analyzing impact easy while also being accurate without having to do the whole rigmarole of an A/B test. So, in summary, did it work is one of the hardest questions to answer. But if you segment customers by those who used or did not use your feature, segment by the number of days since they first used that feature, and segment by the propensity for them to use that feature or perform a goal, then you can actually successfully measure impact without doing an A/B test. And that's all for the presentation, but I do want to stick around to answer some questions here. Let me switch over to the window to see if indeed there are some questions. And yes, there are. Excellent. So let me go through these couple questions, and then I think we are going to wrap up around 2:10 Pacific time, 5:10 Eastern. So, Josh, excellent question. So does this avoid self-selection bias? Most active users are most likely to discover a new feature, retain, etc. And yes, we went into that. So happily, the answer to that question is yes. And then Matt asks, how are you calculating propensity? Sorry if I missed that. Yeah, so for us, propensity is based on the past 60 days of user behavior. So we take into account what events users have performed, how frequently they perform them, and a number of other factors that eventually spits out the propensity score. We do have a detailed white paper on this on our help center. So if you go to just Google Mixpanel help impact report, you'll be able to find it. Actually, maybe I can just post that link. I'll do that right now. We go into detail on how propensity is calculated, and you can read up more about it there. It's a little bit beyond me, but luckily we have an excellent team of data scientists that helped us out with it. So let me grab this link, and then I'll post it just a second here. There it is. Apologies for the delay. All right, here we go. So here's our white paper. Feel free to check that out, and that will hopefully answer your questions in more detail. So Lauren asked, what were your segments again that you recommend? So let me go back to the presentation. So those three segments are to break out users by users that have or have not used your feature. So the cohort of adopters and non-adopters, we'd like to call them. Segment by days since first use. So you basically want to line up your time series such that every user is on the same time scale relative to when they first tried the new feature. And then finally, segment by propensity to do the goal. And that's what Mixpanel propensity modeling calculates behind the scenes to predict how likely a user is to actually perform your goal. I'll just leave those up just in case. And back to the questions. Matt asks, are there any common gotchas when using this tool? Common mistakes or misuse you see that we might avoid? Yeah, so there's a couple tips I would recommend. Number one, try to, let me back up a little bit. When you're using this tool, you're going to analyze the impact of one event on another. And so the event that you start with is going to be the event that indicates a user tried out your new feature. Show me the impact of event X on event Y, in other words. So for event X, you're going to want to make sure that that is an event that indicates that, yes, the user tried your new feature. But you also want to set the time scale of the impact report so that it starts on the day that the feature became available to 100% of your users. And that's really important because it gets kind of the best split of users that have and have not used the feature over time. The other thing I would recommend is to try to use an engagement type metric for your like the goal metric you're trying to move. The reason being is because you want it to be something that users are going to complete frequently over time. So it could be something like app open. It could be something, if you're like an e-commerce app, it might be like add to cart, something that represents like the user taking your core action, but also something that they do often enough that we can get like a good result from it. So and let me explain why that's important. I can go back to presentation. I head to this slide. So each of these time series is, actually, let me go to the screenshot. Each of these time series is the, by default, it's the average rate at which users are doing your goal metric. So if it's app open, it's the number of app opens per user per day. And therefore, the more of those you have, the better. And if you have something that's pretty infrequently formed, maybe like a infrequently performed, like a conversion goal, that tends to lead to this report being spikier and potentially less reliable. So you want to do something where you have plenty of data, enough for those averages to work out well. Admittedly, that is one slight limitation of the tool, but certainly engagement is important for many PMs, and hopefully it's important for you as well. Josh asked, can you explain the time window and why it's significant? Does the time window need to include the date when the feature was launched? Yeah, so I touched on this briefly in response to Matt's question. But yes, so the time window, there's kind of two, actually maybe even three things that impact the time window. First thing you'll notice is there's 15 days before and after. And that impacts like how many days we show before and after this launch day 0. So that's the most direct impact on this chart. The other thing you'll want to consider is your launch date. So when you're picking the launch event that you're going to analyze, you want to pick the day that it became available to 100% of your users, so that all users have the opportunity to actually try out your new feature. If they don't have the opportunity to use your new feature, then the line of people that have not tried the new feature will be full of many more people and potentially your many more active users, and that might skew the results. So you want to make sure that the day that you select for day 0 is in fact the day that the feature became available to 100% of your users. Okay, let me know if that answered your question. Okay, sounds good. John asks, what's the support like for Android apps that are not on the Play Store for devices that may have intermittent or only occasional internet connectivity? So I think that's like a more Mixpanel generic question, John. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But Mixpanel does have a queuing system. So if you install our SDK into your app, it will wait to send the user behavior events until they are back online. And so any events, I think we queue for up to 5 days. And And so in any events that happen when the user's offline will still reach Mixpanel as long as they come online within 5 days from performing those events. And then I don't believe Play Store impacts it either. So any Android app, you can slap our SDK in there, and it should work. All right, Simone asks, what if you find the new feature has a negative impact? It's been shipped to all users. What are the consequences of walking that feature back? Well, so that's decision time. If you find that your feature is having a negative impact, then I would strongly recommend kind of confirming that with a couple qualitative user interviews. Just want to make sure that the data isn't leading you astray, just like you would with any product decision. But talk to users, see if they're not having a good experience. Maybe something's broken, maybe there's a bug. There could be all sorts of reasons that there's a negative impact. So before you roll back that feature, just check to make sure that it's working as intended. And then, of course, if you find there is a negative impact, that's one of the reasons why this report is helpful, because it will tell you that, hey, no, this new feature actually isn't a good area of investment. Perhaps focus your efforts elsewhere. And that can really help you with your roadmap, help you prioritize. It could be very, very helpful in that regard. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Not seeing it, not seeing any questions, but I'll give you guys another 30 seconds here just in case you're typing, but otherwise we can wrap up. Matt asks, is there a different URL to that white paper? I don't believe there is, but tell you what, I can email it to you. If you just shoot me an email at brandon@mixpanel.com, I'll just post that here. Shoot me an email and I can send you the PDF version. All right, I need 10 more seconds for questions, just in case. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Check out Mixpanel if this was of interest to you, and feel free to get in touch with me. I posted my email and chat there. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.